It was about 3:30 on an August afternoon when I found myself looking down upon All Hallows, and at first glimpse of it, every vestige of fatigue passed away. Having at last reached the end of my journey, dust, heat, wind, having come limping out upon the green sea bluff beneath which lay its walls, I confess the actuality excelled my dreams of it. What most astonished me, perhaps, was the sense not of its age, but its air of abandonment. It lay couched there as if in hiding in its narrow sea bay. No other roof, not even a chimney, was in sight, only the dark blue arch of the sky and that gaunt coast fading away into the haze of a west over which were already gathering the veils of sunset. I should have come earlier. The distance was of little account, but 9 flinty hills in 7 miles is certainly hard commons. No, I shall not forget that walk, or the conclusion of it, when all but dead beat I stretched my aching limbs on the turf which crowned that last hill and feasted my eyes on the cathedral. I continued for a while to watch All Hallows, to spy upon it, and no less intently than a sentry, who, not quite trusting his eyes, has seen a shape approaching in the dusk. Those gigantic statues, for example, which flanked the base of the tower, images of angels and saints I had learnt from my guidebook. Only 6 of them could be visible from where I sat, and yet I found myself counting them again and again, for my first impression had been that 7 were in view. But what folly to have been frittering time away at an hour when no doubt the cathedral would soon be closed. There was but one faint chance left of making an entry, and so at last I found my way into All Hallows, entering by a dwarfish side door with zigzag mouldings. There hung for corbel to its dripstone a curious leering face, its forked tongue out to give me welcome, and an appropriate one too for the figure I made. But once beneath that prodigious roof-tree, the hush, the coolness, the unfathomable twilight drifted in on my small human consciousness. Except for the windows over my head, filtering with their stained glass the last radiance of the sun, there was but little visible colour, and an economy of decoration. To the east, a dark wooden multitudinously figured rood screen shut off the choir and the high altar from the nave. I seemed to have exchanged one universal actuality for another, the burning world of nature for this oasis of quiet. 20 or 30 paces away, an old man was standing. To judge from the black and purple gown he wore, he was a verger. He had not realized, it seemed, that a visitor shared his solitude. He was listening. His head was craned forward, and as I watched, he raised his eyes and scanned the complete upper regions of the northern transept. He continued so long in the same position that I at last determined to break in on his reverie. At the sound of my footsteps, he turned. He resembled one of those old men whom Rembrandt delighted in drawing, the knotted hands, the black drooping eyebrows, the thin-lipped ecclesiastical mouth. White as a miller with dust, hot and draggled, I was hardly the kind of visitor that any self-respecting custodian would welcome, but he greeted me with every courtesy. I apologized for the lateness of my arrival. Until I caught sight of you, I hadn't ventured far, otherwise I might have found myself a prisoner for the night. The old man smiled.
As a matter of fact, sir, the cathedral is closed to visitors at 4. Services are not as frequent as they were. Visitors are rare, too. We are too far out of the hurly-burly to be much intruded on. Not that them who come to worship are intruders, far from it, but most that come are mere sightseers.
Well, I cannot claim to be a regular churchgoer, I said. I am myself a mere sightseer, and yet, even to sit here for a few minutes is to be reconciled.
Ah, reconciled, sir, the old man repeated. I can well imagine it after a journey on such a day as this, but to live here is another matter.
It must be desolate in winter.
We have our storms, sir, he agreed. You'd be astonished at the power of the winds.
I mustn't detain you, I said, but you were saying that services are infrequent now. Why is that?
Pray, don't think of keeping me, sir, but I was supposing you may have seen something that appeared in the newspapers. We lost our Dean, Dean Pomfrey, last November.
I held my peace, and the old man, as if to make amends, asked me if I would care to see the building.
The light is smalling, he explained, but if we keep to the ground level, there'll be a few minutes to spare, and we shall not be interrupted if we go quietly on our way.
For the moment the reference eluded me. I could only thank him for the suggestion. I explained, too, that I had read of Dr. Pomfrey's illness.
Aye, sir, a saint, if ever there was. But it's worse than illness, sir. It's oblivion.
He dropped his voice.
But sharing one's troubles is sometimes a relief. You see, sir, I am myself, and have been for 12 years now, the Dean's verger. And our Dean was a man who was all things to all men. None of your apron and gaiter high in mightiness whatsoever, sir. And then that. And to come on us without warning, or at least without warning as could be taken as such.
I followed his eyes into the darkening spaces above us. A light like tarnished silver lay over the soundless vaultings.
You must understand, sir, the old man continued, the procession for divine service proceeds from the vestry, out under the rood screen and into the chancel there. If you stand to the right, you will see the altar screen, 14th century work, Bishop Robert de Beaufort, a unique example. But what I was saying is that when we proceed for the services, it has always been our custom to keep close together. Well, on that afternoon, I had turned as usual to bow Dr. Pomfrey into his stall, when I found to my consternation he wasn't there. The old gentleman had left the vestry with us, that I knew, and then not a vestige. I hurried back, thinking he must have been taken suddenly ill. And yet, sir, I was not surprised to find the vestry vacant. No, our beloved Dean was gone for ever. He had been, the old man whispered the words, abducted, sir. Abducted? He was found, sir, late that night, sitting in a corner, weeping, a child. He didn't know us, sir, didn't know me. Just simple, harmless, memory all gone. If you will just follow me, he whispered. There's a little place where I make my ablutions that might be of service, sir. We could converse there better.
The old man turned and led the way with surprising celerity, and came to a nail-studded door. He opened it, and admitted me into a recess under the central tower, whose only illumination was that of the ebbing dusk from within the cathedral. With trembling rheumatic fingers he lit a candle and pushed open another door.
You will find a basin and a towel in there, sir.
I entered. A print depicting the crucifixion was tacked to the wall, and beneath it stood a tin basin and jug on a stand. Never was water sweeter. I laved my face and hands and drank deep, my throat like a parched river course after a drought. When I returned, the old man was standing before the window.
All Hallows, I might say, sir, is my second home. I have been here, boy and man, for 55 years. Dr. Pomfrey might be with us now in his own self, if only common caution had been observed. But now that the poor gentleman is gone beyond all that, there is no hope of action left. They meet and they have one expert, then another down from London. And I don't say they're not knowledgeable gentlemen, but why not tell all? Why keep back what we know? It's we, sir, and not the rest of the heedless world outside who are responsible. And what I say is, no power here or hereunder can take possession of a place while those inside have faith enough to keep them out. But once let that falter, the seas are in. And when I say no power, sir, I mean with all deference, even Satan himself.
What is wrong here? I asked.
Wrong, sir, Why, I am not doubting that the gentlemen I have mentioned have the salvation of the cathedral at heart, but they refuse to see how close to the edge of things we are, and how we are drifting. So far as my knowledge tells me, there is no sacred edifice in the kingdom of a peace, that is, with All Hallows, that is so open, I mean, sir, to an attack of this terrifying nature. Terrifying? Terrifying, sir. Where else, may I ask, would you expect the powers of darkness to congregate in open besiegement than in this narrow valley? First, the sea out there. Are you aware, sir, that ever since living remembrance, flood tide has been gnawing its way into this bay to the extent of 3 or 4 feet per annum? And think of the floods and gales that fall upon us autumn and winter through. They make the roads well nigh impassable. Are you aware, sir, I continue, that as we stand now we are above a mile from the nearest human habitation? I warrant that if, and which God forbid, you had been shut up here during the night, and it was a near thing, but what you weren't, I warrant you might have shouted yourself dumb with not a human soul to help you. Well, I smiled. As a small boy, one of my particular fancies was to spend a night in a pulpit. But I take it, sir, if you had ventured to give out a text up there in the dark hours, your innocent young mind would not have been prepared for any kind of congregation. You mean this place is haunted? I mean, sir, that there are devilish agencies at work here. He raised his hand. Don't, I entreat you, dismiss what I am saying as the wandering of a foolish old man. I have heard them with these ears. I have seen them with these eyes, though whether they have any positive substance, sir, is beyond my small knowledge. But of what they can do, I can give you definite evidences. But surely every old building is bound to show symptoms of decay. I must apologize, the old man interrupted me. I'm a poor mouth at explanation, sir. Decay, settling, dissolution. I have heard these words bandied from lip to lip, and they fill me with nausea. Why? I am speaking not of dissolution, sir, but of repairs, restorations, not decay, strengthening, not a corroding loss, an awful progress. I could show you places, sir, where stones as rotten as pumice have been replaced by others fresh quarried, and nothing of their kind within miles. There are spots where massive blocks have been pushed into place by sheer force. All Hallows is safer at this moment than it has been for 300 years. They meant well, them who came to see, full of fine talk, and went dumb away, but at heart, sir, they were cowed, horrified. He stood gazing through that narrow inward window. I have not spent 60 years in this place without paying heed to my own thoughts. Look at your newspaper, sir. What they called the Great War is over, and he'd be a brave man who would take an oath before heaven that that was only of human designing. And yet, what do we see around us? Nothing but strife and juggleries and hatred wherever you look. And the church, sir. If you had told me that you were a regular churchman, I shouldn't be pouring out all this to you now. But being not so gives me confidence. By merely listening, you can help me, sir, though you can't help us. You see, sir, he went on dejectedly, I can bear what may be to come. Tell me the worst, and you will have done an old man a service he can never repay. Tell me, on the other hand, that I am merely groping along in a network of devilish delusion, sir. Well, in that case, I hope to be with my master, with Dr. Pomfrey, as soon as possible. We were all children once. I sometimes find myself looking at a young child with little short of awe, sir, knowing that within its mind is a scene of peace and paradise of which we older folk have no notion, and which will fade away out of it as life wears in. I was at a loss to answer him. The fact is," he looked cautiously about him, "what I am now being so bold as to suggest may put you in physical danger. On the other hand, we can leave the building at once, if you are so minded. In any case, we must be gone before dark sets in. Even mere human beings are best not disturbed at any night work. Besides, I once delayed too long myself."
Perhaps if I'd been a little less credulous or less exhausted, I should have begun to doubt this old creature's sanity. But then there was all Hallows itself to take into account. Even now, in this remote candlelit room, the vast edifice seemed to be gently and furtively fretting its impression on my mind. "I only wish I could be of any real help," I said. The old man's expression changed, as if at the coming of a light.
"Why then, sir, let us be gone at once. You are with me, sir. That was all I hoped and asked. Now there's no time to waste."
He lowered his voice.
"What I would suggest, sir, if you've no objection, is your kindly grasping my gown. There will be a good deal of up and downing, but I know the building blindfold."
He opened the door and blew out the light. We were instantly marooned in an impenetrable darkness, and we set out on our expedition. I clung, I confess, desperately tight to my lifeline as we groped onward. I found myself steadily ascending, and then in a while brushing along a gallery or corkscrewing up a new staircase. Once, to recover our breath, we paused opposite a slit in the masonry at which to breathe the tepid sweetness of the outer air, and I caught a glimpse of the night's first stars. We then turned inward once more, ascending.
"Dead still here, sir, if you please. There's a drop of some 60 feet a few paces on."
As we approached the edge of this stony precipice, the gloom paled a little, and I guessed that we must be standing in some coign of the southern transept. It seemed the northern windows opposite us were boarded up. Gazing out, I could detect scaffolding poles, like knitting needles, thrust out from the walls and a balloon-like spread of canvas above them. For the moment, my ear was haunted by what appeared to be the droning of an immense insect. But this presently ceased.
"You will understand, sir," breathed the old man. "The scaffolding over there was put up when the last gentleman came down from London to inspect the fabric. Now, sir—"
I strained every sense, and yet I could detect not the faintest murmur under that wide-spreading roof. How long we stayed in this position I cannot say. Minutes sometimes seem like hours. Then suddenly, without the slightest warning, I became aware of a peculiar vibration. It suggested the remote whirring of an enormous millstone. My companion pressed closer.
"Do you see that, sir?"
I gazed and gazed, but saw nothing. And then, though I cannot be certain, it seemed that the voluminous spread of canvas perceptibly trembled, as if a huge hand had been thrust out to draw it aside. No time was given me to make sure. The old man had hastily withdrawn me into the opening of the wall, and we made no pause in our retreat until we had come again to the narrow slit of window.
"Well, sir?"
"It's so difficult to be sure of oneself. Have you ever actually encountered anything? Near at hand, I mean."
"Well, yes, sir, in this very gallery. They nearly had me, sir. But by good fortune, there's a recess further on, stored up with some old fragments of carving. I had my warning, and managed to leap in there and conceal myself, but only just in time. Indeed, sir, I confess I was in such a condition of terror and horror, I turned my back."
"You mean you didn't look, but something came?"
"Yes, sir. There was a sound like clanging metal, but I don't think it was metal. It drew near at a furious speed, then passed me, making a filthy gust of wind."
"And no other sound?"
"No other, sir, except in the distance a noise like a stupendous kind of gibberish. No human sound. The air shook with it. You see, sir, I myself wasn't of any consequence, I take it, unless a mere obstruction. But I have heard it said that the rarity of these happenings is only because it's not any sort of pleasure for such beings, such apparitions, sir, good or bad, to visit our world. Did you hear anything then, sir? His gentle mumbling ceased, and we listened together. But every ancient edifice has voices and soundings of its own. There was nothing audible I could put a name to, only a faint perpetual whir of grinding, such as, to overstimulated senses, the stablest stones set one on top of the other might make. "And now, sir," he continued with a sigh of weariness, "would you perhaps follow me onto the roof? It is the last visit I make." We had not far to go. The old man drew open a heavily ironed door at the head of a flight of stairs, and admitted us at once to the leaden roof. The last faint hues of sunset were fading in the west. We edged softly along, to find ourselves now all but tete-a-tete with the gigantic figures that stood sentinel at the base of the tower. The old man peered cautiously about him as we advanced. Once, with a hasty gesture, he drew me back and fixed his eyes on a figure which was silhouetted against the starry emptiness, a forbidding thing enough, viewed in this vague luminosity which seemed to be perceptibly stirring on its wind-worn pedestal. But no. "All's well," the old man signalled to me, and we pushed on. At last we completed our circuit of the tower, and stood eyeing one another like conspirators. Maybe there was a tinge of incredulity on my face. "No, sir," murmured the old man. "I expected no other. The night is uncommonly quiet. They seem to leave us at peace on nights of quiet. But we must be getting home." The notion of fumbling down again into the blackness was singularly uninviting. To gain a moment's respite, I inquired about getting a bed for the night in the village, and, as I had hoped, the old man himself offered me hospitality. I thanked him, but still hesitated to follow, for I was trying to discover what peculiar effect of darkness a moment before had deceived me into the belief that some small animal, a dog, I guessed, had taken cover behind the stone buttress nearby. But that apparently had been a mere illusion. Nothing stirred now. "You were saying," I pressed him, "that when repairs at the building were in contemplation, even the experts were perplexed by what they discovered. What did they say?" "Say, sir? Examine that balustrade which you're leaning against. Look at that gnawing and fretting above the lead. All that is honest wear and tear, constant weathering of rain and wind. But now compare it, if you please, with this St. Mark here." I stooped close under the huge grey creature of stone, and I confess I could find not the slightest trace of fret or friction. Far from it. The stone had been grotesquely decorated in low relief with a two-headed crocodile, and the undulations of the creature were cut as sharp as with a knife in cheese. "Now, cast your glance upward, sir. Is that what you would call a saintly shape?" What I took to represent an eagle was perched on the image's lifted wrist, but lowering and vulture-like. The head of the figure was poised at an angle of defiance. Its whole aspect was undeniably sinister and intimidating. "Aye, sir, and so with some of the rest of them," the old man commented. "There are other wills than the Almighty's." "But one doesn't repair in order to destroy." "No, sir, and why not? To give strength for evil purposes. Would that be time wasted, if such was your aim? An institution may be beyond dying, sir. It may be being restored for a worse destruction. And 100 trumpeting voices would make no difference when the faith and life within is tottering to its fall." Somehow this muddle of metaphors reassured me. Obviously the old man's wits had worn a little thin. "And yet you are taking it for granted," I expostulated, "that, if what you say is true, a stranger could be of the slightest help." The old man laid a trembling hand upon my sleeve. "Have patience with me, sir. I could never express the gratitude I feel. You have given me the occasion to unbosom myself, to make a clean breast, as they say. You couldn't help me, except only by your presence here. God alone knows who can."
At that instant, a dull, enormous rumble reverberated from within the building, as if a huge block of stone had been dislodged. The flags on which we stood seemed to tremble. The fingers tightened on my arm.
"Come, sir, we must be gone at once. We have stayed too long."
But we emerged into the night at last without mishap. The little western door, above which the grinning head had welcomed me on my arrival, admitted us to terra firma again, and we made our way up the steep sandy track. We turned at the summit and looked back. All Hallows lay beneath us, resembling some natural prehistoric outcrop of that sea-worn, rock-bound coast, but strangely human and saturnine. But far out to sea, summer lightnings were now in idle play, flickering into the sky like the unfolding of a signal, planet to planet, then gone. That alone may have accounted for the faint vitreous glare that seemed to glitter across the windows of the northern transept. And yet how easily deceived is the imagination! I could have vowed this was no reflection, but the glow of some light shining fitfully from within, outwards. The old man paused beside the gate leading into his garden.
"You will forgive me, sir, for mentioning it, but I make it a rule to leave all my troubles outside when I come home. My daughter is a widow, and not long in that sad condition, so I keep as happy a face as I can on things. And yet, well, sir, I wonder at times if a personal sacrifice isn't incumbent on them that have their object most at heart. I'd go out myself very willingly, sir, if there was any certainty in my mind that it would serve the cause. It would be little to me if—"
He made no attempt to complete the sentence. On my way to bed that night, the old man led me in on tiptoe to show me his grandson. I stooped over the child's cot. The boy was of that fairness which almost suggests the unreal. He had flung back his bedclothes, as if innocence in this world needed no covering or defence, and lay at ease, the dews of sleep on lip, cheek, and forehead. "The lovely thing," I muttered. "Where is he now, I wonder?" And from out of the distance there came the first prolonged whisper of a wind from over the sea. It was 11 by my watch. The storm after the heat of the day seemed to be drifting inland, but All Hallows apparently had forgotten to wind its clock. Arrival admitted us to terra firma again, and we made our way up the steep sandy track. We turned at the summit and looked back. All Hallows lay beneath us, resembling some natural prehistoric outcrop of that sea-worn, rock-bound coast, but strangely human and saturnine. But far out to sea, summer lightnings were now in idle play, flickering into the sky like the unfolding of a signal, planet to planet, then gone. That alone may have accounted for the faint vitreous glare that seemed to glitter across the windows of the northern transept. And yet how easily deceived is the imagination! I could have vowed this was no reflection, but the glow of some light shining fitfully from within, outwards. The old man paused beside the gate leading into his garden.
"You will forgive me, sir, for mentioning it, but I make it a rule to leave all my troubles outside when I come home. My daughter is a widow, and not long in that sad condition, so I keep as happy a face as I can on things. And yet, well, sir, I wonder at times if a personal sacrifice isn't incumbent on them that have their object most at heart. I'd go out myself very willingly, sir, if there was any certainty in my mind that it would serve the cause. It would be little to me if—"
He made no attempt to complete the sentence. On my way to bed that night, the old man led me in on tiptoe to show me his grandson. I stooped over the child's cot. The boy was of that fairness which almost suggests the unreal. He had flung back his bedclothes, as if innocence in this world needed no covering or defence, and lay at ease, the dews of sleep on lip, cheek, and forehead. "The lovely thing," I muttered. "Where is he now, I wonder?" And from out of the distance there came the first prolonged whisper of a wind from over the sea. It was 11 by my watch. The storm after the heat of the day seemed to be drifting inland, but All Hallows apparently had forgotten to wind its clock.